welcome AJ.
Thank you. Thanks, Anita. Wow, what an incredible intro. Thank you so much. As the closing keynote speaker, my job is to help you implement everything that you learned today. No pressure on me. So that you can, when you go back to your workplaces either tomorrow or next week or whenever, you can actually pick and choose the ideas that you learned today and implement them. So have you guys learnt anything at all? Has today been useful at all? Yep, all right, a couple of ideas. Okay, so I was trying to figure out, I've been sitting in the back all day learning with you, like some sort of distant creep at the back, right? And so I heard a lot of stuff that you've heard. And now my challenge is to give you an idea that you can use to organize all that information. So one of the ideas I have for you is this thing called one big question. And everyone in their lifetime at some point has had one big question they're trying to answer. They might just not know about it yet. So take, for example, my brother. I have two brothers from my dad's earlier marriage. This is the one that didn't invent fire. He's been trying to answer one question his whole life, and that is, how can I get more by doing less? And it sounds like, oh, that's a really lazy sort of question to ask. But I rang him up the other day and said, how are you going? And he said, brass. That's how he talks, like Rambo. I don't know why. Brass, I'm working so hard. Every day I get up at 9 a.m. and then I've got to go to the surgery at 12. And then by 2 o'clock, man, I'm done. I was like, that's a 2-hour job. Man, my days are like 18, 20 hours. But it shows that he's been working on it. And he doesn't even realize he's been working on it, right? So we've got this instinctive question that we all try to ask ourselves. And you're probably wondering, well, AJ, what's your question?
What's your question?
Thank you. All right, so here's my question. How can we make tomorrow better than today? And it's a really interesting question that drives everything I do. And even today, I'm thinking about, how do I take this question? This is the one big question I have. And as a professional speaker, I'm trying to bring everything, all my learning, my understanding to this question. And so my challenge for you is, what's going to be your one big question when you get back to work and you sit down with your teams or your organization in strategy planning sessions? What's your one big question? And when you figure that out, take all of the learning, the ideas that you got today, and try and figure out that one big question. That's my tip for you. So, today's session is, how can we reimagine the employee experience? And what I want to do is actually help you answer this question, but in typical AJ style. We're not going to answer that question right now. We're actually going to put it aside, and then we're going to go on a bit of a journey, if that's okay with all of you. Is that cool? Yeah? All right, cool. We're going to go on a bit of a journey, and by the time we pick it up again, I'm hoping that you'll see things a little bit differently, how I see the world. And it'll help you answer this question. And when you go back to your organizations, you'll be able to affect change. Because all of us here come from different backgrounds, different professional industries, different career levels, whatever. But one thing that's really common with all of us is that we want change. We're all change makers at some level. Some of us are crazy, doing their change stuff. Others just getting into it and trying to figure out, how do we affect change in organizations that are, very well established. So we're going to go on a bit of a journey. So let's kick that off. This is my world. It's the world of innovation and disruption. It's an interesting world to play in. And I want to start with these two words have got very interesting characteristics about them. And we'll start with innovation because that's an easy one. So innovation is an interesting characteristic. I've found, talking to people over the last 5 years, that innovation is one of those words that if you get it, use it, and beautiful things happen. But if you don't, you actively hate it. And you want to stab people that talk to you about it, right? And so when I embarked upon this world, because I come from small business, right? And I thought, I want to play a bigger game. I want to get into corporate. So I started investigating this, and I was deeply curious as to why people hate innovation. And it turns out that they don't actually hate innovation. They just hate their experiences with other leaders that have promised them innovation and change throughout their organization, and they haven't delivered on it. So I found that really interesting about innovation. And the reason they haven't delivered on it is because they too don't really understand it. Which brings me to the second word, disruption. And disruption is one of those things where I think we all kind of know what it is. We've all been around a newborn baby at some point in life. We know what a disruptive force feels like. Yeah. So disruption is one of those things where, we kind of know what it is, and there's so much been written about it. We know that Airbnb affected the hotel industry. We know that Uber made taxis better. We know all this stuff. There's so much been written, produced, and you can listen to it. Yet we keep getting disrupted. And I find that fascinating. Why? Why do we keep getting disrupted? And it turns out, when I dug a little bit deeper, the answer lies in this fella here, the humble bumblebee. And I heard this really interesting story a couple of years ago, where it was the 1930s, and two scientists, having consumed a couple of too many red cordials, started discussing this little fella, the bumblebee. And in their infinite scientific wisdom, they sat down, they analysed the bumblebee, and they said, its tiny little wings cannot generate enough lift to move its massive body. Therefore, due to the laws of physics, the bumblebee can't fly. Here's the thing, though. The bumblebee doesn't know the laws of physics, so it flies around quite merrily. These scientists are looking at this thing flying around, actually going, yeah, it can't fly. And I use that as a metaphor for why companies get disrupted. Michael was very generous in his speech today. He called it, what did he call it? When an organization keeps doing the same thing, it starts with P. P, it wasn't predicament, it wasn't predicated, it was, I can't remember what it was. Sorry? Precedent, yes, precedent, yeah, precedent organization. He was very kind with that definition. I just think it's scientific thinking, rules, regulations, policies, procedures versus the bumblebee, and they both come from very different worlds. Like, they're both conditioned to think in very different ways, but they're both conditioned to think. The scientists with their rules, regulations, policies, procedures, and the bumblebee with nature and survival. Right? So the conditioned thinking is quite fascinating in organizations. And I know you need policies, procedures, rules, and regulations, but what frustrates me as a change maker trying to affect change is when people just say, this is how we've always done it, sorry. And you've heard great examples from Grant, Roland shared some stuff too. Throughout the day, you've heard examples of, this sort of siloed thinking. So I want to share a story with you that you're not going to get anywhere else. To give you an example of how this relates to my world. And it's a story about my dad. Some of you have met him, I think. I think so, my parents, yeah. My background's Sri Lankan, so my parents were like, traditional Sri Lankan parents, study hard, don't come home if you don't get an A, that sort of stuff, right? So my dad was very strict. To compound matters worse, he was an army officer in the Sri Lankan army when the British ruled Sri Lanka. So my childhood was boot camp, right? It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And I remember we always used to fight because Dad thinks very differently to me, We always used to fight. And one time, I found myself back home after university visiting my folks, and I was in my room and I got locked in my room. But I have no lock on the door in my room. I was just, the door wouldn't open, it got stuck. And so I'm jiggling it around, trying to get it open, and I bust the handle. And my dad comes running along, and he says, "My God, what have you done? You've broken the door. Now, useless fellow." And then, he said to me, "Now I'm going to have to call your cousin to fix it." And he goes, but I said, "Dad, you don't need to call my cousin. I can fix this." You know what my dad said to me? He goes, "You studied IT. How can you fix something like this?" Scientist thinking, right? So I've learned over the years not to argue with my dad, right? So I was thinking, instead of arguing with him, if I just accept his world, maybe I can influence around him and get him to do what I want. So he's just, in his wisdom, he says, "I'm not qualified to fix this door." So I say to him, "Okay, that's fine, I'm not qualified to fix it. You don't need to call Shantaya. Like, how about I teach you how to fix it and you can fix the door?" "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So we go off to Bunnings, we buy a door handle, right? I teach him how to fix it, and he fixes the damn door, right? To me, that is illogical. But I still influenced him to change based on his silo way of thinking. So my challenge to you right now is what rules, what regulations, what policies, procedures are limiting your thinking? And this is a great question to ask when you get back to your teams and you're with your own people in the room. So we're going to play a little game, because it's that time of day. So we're going to play a game called What's Impossible. And what I want you to do is yell out anything that you think is really impossible. And I want to check how conditioned you are within the confines of the room. So just start yelling out what's impossible. But before you do, let's make things interesting. And let's actually get, can I have a volunteer? You can stay in your seats. Can I have a volunteer? Someone up the back just to write down people's answers. Someone up the back table. Just put your hand up. Anyone? Back table. Very easy. The hand. Oh, yep. Yourself? Yep. What's your name, sorry? Trish. Trish, thank you. All right, Trish, here's your challenge. You've got to keep up with the room of creative change makers, all right? So write down anything that they say, all right? Let's go. Yell it out. What's impossible? Go. Sorry? Humans flying. Trish, you got it? Keep going, keep going. Sneezing with your eyes open. Great. What else? Come on, let's go. Trish, yell out when you got 10. Let's go. Kissing your elbow. Yes, go, go, go. Anything that's impossible. Let's go. Come on. Come on, Darwin, let's go.
Walking past chocolate cake.
Sorry?
Walking past chocolate cake.
Walking past chocolate cake. Let's go. Come on, let's creative. Come on. Trish, how many is that?
That's
5. Come on, Darwin, we can do better.
winning Powerball individually tonight.
Yes, I love it. Someone's got to win. All right, what else? Come on, let's go.
Avoiding the midges in the wet season.
Oh, very Darwin. I love it. Cool. All right, what else? How many we got, Trish? We got 7? Not sweating in Darwin. Cool. What else?
Walking on water.
Walking on water. Great. What else?
Swimming in the sea in Darwin.
Darwin represent. Yeah. Have we got 10? Brilliant. Well done. Okay. Here's the trick. You've got 10 from this beautiful room of creative change makers. I've got 10 on my own list, and it's based on everyone I've spoken to in the last 5 years when I run this exercise with them. Now, you're going to lose points if I've got it on my list. Here we go. What's impossible? Fly, levitate. I think someone yelled that out. Okay, 1 point, gone. Walk on water. Time travel. Oh, come on. Breathe underwater without tanks. Teleport and materialize invisible. Men have babies. Live forever, awaken the dead. Ooh. All right, these last 3 are my own. No one said this stuff, thank God. First one, ride a black unicorn. Lift this building with my bare hands. My third, and if any of you got this, I'll be very surprised. Avoid mum trying to marry me off, right? It's ridiculous, right? Ridiculous. Now, I am so proud of all of you because you came up with some really creative answers, and that gives me hope that tomorrow can be better than today. I'm excited. Cool. Thank you, Trish, and thank you all of you. All right, let's keep moving. That's a little bit about my world. I want to dabble in your world now. The Great Resignation. Some of you have heard of it? So again, I see things very differently, and everyone, this made headlines all around the world, and everything I've really seen written on it, produced on it, whatever, looks at it, the phenomenon, as a talent management problem. And I looked at it and I go, this isn't talent management, this is something else. And so I want to play with your perception of this problem, and the reason why I'm playing with it will become apparent in a little while. But let's take a look at the Great Resignation as a talent management problem. So McKinsey surveyed some people in the heart of the Great Resignation last year, and they said, this is why people in our organization, this is the organization saying, why they leave. So more money, more perks, better work-life balance. That's what the organizations themselves said when all these employees left, all the people in the organization said, these are the 3 reasons. Then McKinsey went out to the employees that resigned and said, hey, why did you really leave? And these are the reasons they put up. Don't feel valued by company, don't feel valued by manager, don't feel like they belong. 2 completely disjointed worlds. Scientist thinking versus bumblebee activity. I see this everywhere I go. But this is still talent management. Let's try and reshape it a little bit. So when you would talk about disruption, I'm going to talk to you about the customer experience. There's two sides of a business coin. One is customers, one is employees. And when we talk about disruption in terms of a customer experience, we're talking about two conditions that show up whenever anything is disrupted. And the two conditions are, first of all, there's some sort of friction. That friction doesn't get attended to. Then there becomes frustration. And finally, disruption. And disruption is the effect of a company's inability to innovate to stay relevant.
Slow.
Sorry?
Repeat that again, slow.
This is a heckle, right? Disruption is an effect of a company's inability to innovate and stay relevant. Because think about it, right? Actually, let me walk you through something. Who remembers, let's take the Uber. Who remembers calling up a taxi back in the day, yeah? You try when your name's Kulatunga, seriously. And your first name's AJ. Adrian, no, AJ. Adrian, AJ, you know. It's friction, right? It's not a smooth experience. It was, and then things started happening in the world, and all of a sudden it became friction, you know. There was a bit of friction. How many of you have been in a terrible taxi ride or an annoying taxi ride? Anyone? Yeah, right. Did you guys take the same taxi? So you get it, right? It's frustrating. And then Uber comes along, and it's three dude bros going, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could summon a car to come and pick us up? Yeah, man, that'd be cool. Let's build that. And they created Uber, right? So disruption, again, you have the frustration and the friction. And who got disrupted? The taxi industry. Uber's like loving innovation. And as consumers, as customers, this little thing we hold in our hands is the gateway to convenience. It really is. We can literally summon food, shelter, transport, even a potential life partner by hitting a button, right? It is convenience on steroids. So this is the customer side. But remember I said there's two sides of the business coin, right? The customer and the employee side. So I wonder if this fits the employee side. So let's have a look. What was the friction with the employee experience? 20%, that number is world engagement. And it's not just recently. This is like a 10-year study that Gallup does every single year. And over the last decade or so, it's hovered around the 20% mark, which means that 20% of the global workforce is fully engaged at work, actively engaged. They're turning up dancing to work, right? 80% isn't, or is actively disengaged, meaning they start sabotaging stuff at work. It's crazy, right? 20%. Now this is the global average, so different countries, different stats, and the NT is probably a lot better. Australia in terms hovers around the 24% mark because we've got a great quality of lifestyle here. Yay. So that's the friction. What's the frustration? Well, during the pandemic, organizations, what I observed was like, okay, this has happened, oh my God, it's terrible, and it's not going away, so we need to actually figure out ways that we can continue to do business. So the employees were asked to work from home, and then business sort of kept going, it needed to tick along, right? So all these employees are working hard, and then when the pandemic eased up a little bit, you know, everyone celebrated, they just, you know, yay, it's done, we can go on holiday now. No, that's not what happened at all. What happened? The organization said, okay, things are starting up. We have 2 years we have to make up. Let's go. And as a result, frustration hit. I don't know anyone who's not fatigued over the last 3 years or so. Well, maybe Darwin's a little bit different, but even some of the people in Darwin I spoke to, it's like, yeah, man, it's deep. It's deep. I'm like, but you're in Darwin. How does that work? It's still deep, man. We're all connected. And you are, you know, you're all connected everywhere, right? So that's the frustration. Does that lead to disruption? Yeah, it does. So I view the Great Resignation as a disruptive force. And I wrote an article on this, and it was quite interesting. I released 2 versions of the article. The first version, I put my name on it. I said, hey, I wrote this article. It's great. It's wonderful. You need to read it. It's about the Great Resignation as not a talent management, but as a disruptive force. And I released that out, and I got about 500 views. It was all right. Yeah, cool. No worries. I released another version where I didn't put my name on it. That got 33,000 views around the world. And I found that fascinating. It's really interesting, right? And it was shared by people all around the world. I don't think anyone in Australia shared it. It was very interesting. But because I was vocal about those results, other people in Australia took a look at it and go, oh, that's interesting. That's obviously something there. Let's share it now. And I think Australia, really, we've had it so good for so long, right? We're a little bit easy going here, you know, but that presents opportunity, really good opportunity. So this is how I look at the Great Resignation. What's interesting about this stuff is that disruption gets handled with innovation. Frustration is getting fixed. But no one's really dealing with the friction inside an organization. No one's really dealing with the friction inside an organization, because the tendency that we do is not really try and fix things, but we add more to it, you know. Like I do a lot of work with technology companies, and there's one company in the NT that were really interested in working with me to do some business acumen training. You know, people are like just making all these, you know, they're not performing their best. They don't really understand the business, so they're making decisions that cost us a lot of money. So I'm trying to sort of talk to them. They're really busy, you know, whatever. They just announced a massive recruiting campaign. So again, they're trying to force stuff through without fixing the problems. You know, that momentum, which is a real challenge, right? But instinctively, we've kind of been, you know, we need more. All right, push harder. We need more. Push harder, you know. It's really interesting. So I'm working with one of my heroes. Does anyone here like Formula One at all? Yes. 1, 2, 3? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. You guys will know Michael Schumacher, right? You've heard the name, Michael Schumacher? Yeah, he's an amazing Formula One driver, very talented, right? One of his old race engineers used to be the head of aerodynamics. And I'm working with him to help him tell his story out there to the rest of the world. It's an amazing project, and I'm deeply honored to work on it. The funny thing about aerodynamics is in the world of Formula One, for about 70 or 80, since the 70s and 80s, what they used to do was, how do we go faster? More power, more power. He comes along and says, all right, you guys are doing the power thing. What about aerodynamics? How can we change the shape of the car and reduce the friction so it goes faster? And that developed, and that's how they're. So it's the same sort of metaphor here. So what I want to do now is walk you through a framework of mine called heart-centered innovation that'll help you reduce the friction in your organization. And again, I know we've learnt a lot of frameworks today, a lot of models. This is just something you can use in your toolkit. Pull it out when you see if it's necessary or not. Otherwise, keep it in there for a rainy day, right? Let me share with you the concept. The reason why this is so important is because innovation, right? Remember, people either get it, use it, love it, great, or they hate it, right? Those that innovate talk about external innovation. How do we commercialize ideas and make money out of it, right? What I'm talking about is internal innovation that all of you would find really valuable if this framework resonates, right? And internal innovation is about activating human potential to create change within your organizations, within your teams, you know? So it's really important. No one's talking about internal innovation, or they haven't looked at it in this way. So let's go for a bit of a walk and see where it takes us. So this is called heart-centered innovation, and the way you use the model is you pop your one big question into the middle, right? And then you work through the framework. So whatever your one big question is, stick that in the middle, and then walk through the individual pieces. So the first bit is the care piece, because if people don't care, nothing happens anywhere, right? And if you think about this, right, as consumers, like we've all been in situations where we've come across someone that just doesn't care, right? Just doesn't care. It's really frustrating as customers, but you know, inside an organization as change makers, right? They just don't care, right? So it's so important to sort of, you know, help people care. Here's the difference between now and pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we want people to empathize with us, to understand us and feel what we're feeling. Now we want people to care. The difference is, I was talking to a really awesome friend of mine who I've known for years. He's a very big CEO type. And I was telling him about my challenges in the speaking, meeting and events industry. And he says to me, AJ, I see what you're doing, mate. You're doing great. Keep going. I believe in you. Great. The guy could book me out globally just like that, but he doesn't, right? So I tell another friend the same story that I told him. And he says, oh, AJ, I just did this really interesting course on marketing. Maybe if you do the course too, you can get something out of it. So I've actually got the course on here with me now. Let me put it on a USB stick and send it to you, and you do the course, and then once you've done it yourself, I'll touch base with you and work you through it. He jumped in the trenches with me. That's care. That's the level of care we all need to generate inside our organization. Now, once you get people caring, the next stage is to commit. And what I've found is most people are involved with a lot of different things, but they're not really committed. Here's the difference. A chicken and a pig, go on a story again, right? A chicken and a pig are walking along the road, socially distanced, of course. And the chicken turns to the pig and goes, hey, we should start a restaurant. Pig goes, well, what would we call it? Chicken thinks for a moment and goes, let's call it ham and eggs. And pig's like, nah, no way. Because you, my friend, would be involved, I would be committed. The pig has to give up its life for the ham. Chicken just drops a leg and walks away. Live another day. Don't know what this is, but hey. It's that time of day, come on, So what I find is that we've all had managers at some point drop something on people's desks and walk away, right? So what we really want is for people to give up their lives to be committed. No, I'm kidding. We don't want that, right? But we kind of actually do have that. I mean, we have so many beautiful people that we know in our circles that have really just given up their lives just because, there's stuff to do and no one else would do it or whatever. They really just push themselves. And of course they burn out. But we also commit to things that don't cause us to burn out. And I was curious about this, so I actually went in and had a look. Why do we do that? It turns out that we burn out when we commit to other people's priorities. So here's my definition of burnout. The moment beyond exhaustion caused by prolonged exposure to someone else's priorities. Yeah, it's deep, eh? It's that time of day. Yeah. So feel free to take a photo, tattoo it, I don't know, like whatever, right? Whatever, we're having fun, let's go. So that's burnout. So once you get people caring, then you commit. Okay, that one? Yeah, cool. Sorry, thank you. I have a team. This is great. Yeah, so all right, photo's done. Everyone good? Tweeted, Bookface, Instablog. Great, awesome. LinkedIn. Oh, the LinkedIn, yes. One person on LinkedIn. Yes, great. It's my primary tool, so I find it fascinating that other people use it too. I'm like, wow, this is cool. Switched on audience. Okay, so the next step is to create. And this is where things go horribly wrong inside organizations because this is the mindset. Like, okay, we need innovation now. We have a problem to solve. Get in a room, huddle. Okay, how do we solve this problem? Right, bang. And they create these solutions in isolation that have no relevance to the rest of the organization. No relevance. And I used to see this all the time in IT. If anyone is going through digital transformation right now, all right, and seeing these systems and then looking at the system going, yeah, the old one doesn't work as well, but the new one's is, it's too hectic. I can't handle it. It's different. But, so they create things in isolation. And one of the things that, I think it was Roland that was talking about it, or maybe it was someone else, but I remember what it was. Yeah, it was Michael. Michael mentioned the 100 dumb things. Use that as an exercise to create. But if you create stuff without people really committed and caring, you produce garbage. So you've got to focus on the care piece because if people don't care, nothing happens anywhere. So get people to care, then commit, then create. And the last thing is you have to connect whatever you created with the rest of the world in a way that gets them to care. And so I do this through strategic storytelling and about impact and influence and whatever. But when you get all this flowing, you'll be able to address the friction in your organization. So if this is useful to you, take a photo of it and just play with it a little bit. Cool. Happy snaps. Yay. Just a couple of people done. Yeah. Checks in the mail. Yeah, and share this stuff, guys. Take photos, share it, whatever. I want my ideas to go out there and outlive me. So please steal whatever you want, right? So here's something interesting. This is why this is so important, the competitive advantage in business is something I've studied. I'm really interested and fascinated by this stuff. And what I've noticed that the competitive advantage in business has changed over time. So in the 80s and 90s, you had Peter Drucker and Jack Welch, and they were all about process and efficiency. Then in the 2000s, you had Jobsy and Gatesy, and they were all about technology. Today, who are our thought leaders today? You've got Angela Duckworth, whose subject is grit. You've got Simon Sinek, who's about leadership. You've got, does anyone know the other gentleman in there? Adam Grant, yeah, cool. All right, and his topic is organization psychology. And lastly, we've got Brene Brown. Something similar about all their different topics. It's about being human. This is the competitive advantage. We know this instinctively, yet for some strange reason we don't connect up the dots and make it happen. So this is so important, and this is why it's really, really important about when you go back to your organizations and sort of reshape the way things work, focus on being human. Let's play with this idea a little bit more. No pictures? Oh, one more? Yep. Cool, awesome, let's go. All right, so here's the question. It's time to pick it up again. So how can we reimagine our employee experience? But given the information I've just shared with you right now, I think the question needs to change. And I think a more effective question would be this. How can we create better human experiences? How can we create better human experiences so that everyone in the organization thrives? Everyone. In your teams, in your stakeholders, everyone. And the way we do this is playing with a concept of efficiency versus effectiveness. Efficiency, policies, procedures, rules, and regulations, versus effectiveness. Okay? And we're going to illustrate that with this gentleman here. That's a photo of me pre-COVID. No. No, we all changed during COVID. No, does anyone know who that is? 2 people? 3 people? Okay, his name's Van Morrison. This is not going to go as well as I thought. Okay, so here's the brown-eyed girl challenge, and it's something that I'm going to need a little music to illustrate. And I borrowed this guitar from a friend of mine, so hopefully it remains intact. And it's pretty fancy, isn't it? I said, what the hell is this thing? He goes, it's a cheese grater. So well, why have you got that in there? He says, sounds better. I don't know. But yeah, so let's see how this goes. So while I figure out how to wear this thing, turn to the person in front of you and say, what have you picked up so far from this thing? Just, yeah, talk to your team. Anything that you've picked up. All right, has anyone learned anything? Has this been useful so far? Yeah, a couple of people? All right, sweet. Okay, so I'm a mad musician, not as good as Hendrix, obviously. Can't even put on the damn guitar, but... So the thing about this song called Brown Eyed Girl, it was written, what's written down on paper is 4 chords. It's a very simple song. So 1, 2, back to the 1, 3. This is why I speak, I can't count. 3, and then there's a 4 one here. Okay, so this is what's written down on paper, 4 chords, right? And it goes like this. Sorry, wrong chord. Hey, where'd we go? Days when the rains came. Down in the hollow, playing a new game. Laughing and a running, hey, hey. Skipping and a jumping. In the misty morning fog with our hearts a thumping, and you, my brown-eyed girl, you, my brown-eyed girl. That's how it's written. 4 chords. Oh, thank you. Thank you for tolerating my craziness. That's how it's written, and for years I played it like that. For years I played it like that. Then one night I was out on Mitchell Street. We won't talk about that. But one night I was out on Mitchell Street and I ran into a musician. His name's Will. I don't know if it's still around, but Will plays it slightly differently. Will's version has 6 chords. Yeah, 6 chords, right? And Will plays it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And his version sounds like this. Hey, where'd we go? Days when the rains came. Down in the hollow, playing a new game. Laughing and a running, hey, hey. Skipping and a jumping. In the misty morning fog with our hearts a thumping, and you, my brown-eyed girl, you, my brown-eyed girl. Which version do you think sounds better? Second one, right? And there's a reason for that. It's structured in such a way to provide a better experience, but it's not as efficient. In other words, Will took a look at what's written down and he goes, okay, I get the idea of what this is, but I'm going to play it differently. I'm going to interpret it differently. So what I'd love to see from all of you is at some point, you're going to go back to your organizations with your teams and you're going to look at your policies, procedures, your rules and regulations, the stuff that's written down. And please, I encourage you to reimagine that and to create better human experiences. And I think it would unlock so much potential within your organizations. And that, my friends, is the Brown Eyed Girl Challenge. Thank you. So, here's the takeaway. Feel free to screenshot it too if you like. Sacrifice efficiency if it means you'll be more effective. I don't know anyone inside an organization that doesn't want effectiveness, the human connection. Everyone wants it. So, that's the thing. What did we cover today? I've secretly been grooming you through the power of questions. If you take a photo of this is the best way to remember this keynote, anything that's related to this keynote. There's a whole bunch of questions. So when you take a look at these questions, at any point in time you go, oh, that's what he was smoking about, like whatever, right? So please take a photo here and jog your memory when you get back. Ah, who said that? Yeah. Congratulations, you're the smart one in the room. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Here's Robert's story. I want to close this conversation now by sharing with you a story, and it's Robert's story, surprise, surprise, but it's a story about what happens when we get this employee experience right. Is it possible to get it right? Yeah, it's possible. What happens if we activate human potential? It's a bit of an emotional story for me, so forgive me if I sort of get it a little bit blur, but let's have the conversation and see where it takes us. So Robert, I grew up here in Darwin. I'm a Darwin boy. And I started my speaking career here. I used to speak at schools and I used to say universities, but no, we've got the one university, so they were very gracious to book me there. So I went in there and I met this kid named Robert at my old high school. And he comes up to me afterwards. He was about 14 years old, and he comes up to me and he says, AJ, I love what you did. Can I have a job? And I was like, no, I don't have a job for you. But thank you, very kind. He's like, well, can I get a photo with you? And I was like, yeah, okay, cool, take the photo. That was the end of that. A few months later, I get a phone call from his teacher. And teacher says, hey, do you remember Robert? I was like, no. That kid you took the photo with? I said, yeah, okay, cool, what's the story? Listen, Robert's failing school, and he's really struggling, and all he wants to do is work in IT. But because he's 14 years old, no one will give him a chance. Do you have anything for him? I said, no, I don't, but I remember him, and he was very nice and kind. Let me meet up with him and have a chat with him. Cool, so I met up with Robert. I said, hey, champ, you don't look like the dumbest kid in school. Like, why are you struggling? Why are you failing school? He's like, well, AJ, it's like this. For maths, they take me out to the classroom, to the beach, give me a compass and a map, and ask me to find my way home again. back to the classroom. I said, well, what's wrong with that? And he goes, well, AJ, for the last 6 years, I've been in junior police rangers where they dropped me into a forest and asked me to find my way back to base camp. And instantly, I knew here's a bumblebee inside a scientific institution where his abilities exceed the environment that he's been in. And so I was like, all right, champ, well, what do you want to do? He goes, AJ, I love computers. I want to build computers. I love networking. I want to build computers. I was like, all right, I might have a job for you. So back in those days, I ran an IT consulting firm, and I get bored a lot. So one of the things I did was I wanted to start a training center so that small business owners can learn how to use IT to really grow their business, not the Excel or the Word stuff around. And nowadays, there's plenty of stuff like that now. But when I did it, it was one of the first in the NT, certainly was the first, but maybe also around Australia. I think there was one other at the time. Anyway, so I get bored and do all this crazy stuff, right? So part of the deal was to create this training center, was to actually create a lab, build a computer lab, right? I didn't want to build a lab, but here's someone that did. So I was like, all right, champ, here's the deal. You come work for me, right? But you got to stay in school, right? You got to work hard. I will give you a job and teach you how to think differently. So he comes to work for me. I teach him how to think differently. I teach him how to think like an entrepreneur. You know, ideas, barriers, solutions. How do we get around them? I teach him all that. And funny enough, he seems more engaged at school. I thought, this is great. Wow, cool. And everything's going. And then we trained 160 business owners together. I think Doug and Annette, you came to the launch, I think. Yeah, it was crazy, right? Crazy back in those days. Anyway, so together. But now, because he's about 15 years old, he starts to get a bit cocky, right? And I can't handle that, so I fired him. So then that was the end of that, right? And then I'm scrolling through the Twitter, and I see this tweet. And it's from Robert, and he goes, you know, once upon a time, I worked for this really amazing guy, really amazing boss, but I didn't exactly know what he meant. But now I do. Thanks, AJ. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then I turn around, and he's standing right there. Whoa, like seriously. Hey, champ, how are you? I just got your tweet. What's going on? And he said, hey, AJ, I just stopped by to tell you, he's about 16 years old there. I stopped by to tell you I signed my 100th client. I was like, what? How did you get 100 clients? And he told me the story. I'm not going to tell you because the way he got it was interesting. He was doing naughty stuff and he stumbled upon an opportunity and it was a scalable opportunity. So he decided, I'm an entrepreneur now, let's make some money, right? So 100 clients. And I was like, wow, this is cool, you know. And then, so time went on. And I caught up with him about a year later. So now he's about 17, 18. I said, we went and had lunch. I think it was at the waterfront, right? We had lunch. And he tells me, I said, how's business? And he goes, oh, it was too hard. I gave that up. But his phone's buzzing, right? And I was like, well, what's with the phone, man? You got some girls going or what, man? And he's like, no, man, they're customers. I'm like, what, customers? What do you mean? Like, I thought you gave up that business. He goes, yeah, I started another one. I'm like, what are you doing now? He goes, well, AJ, I just got this new iPhone, right? The iPhone. And stupid me dropped it and smashed the screen. So I went to cashier in and they wanted like $600 to fix it. AJ, I'm 17 years old. Where am I going to get $600 from, right? So I went on eBay and I found a kit for $100. I fixed the screen. And then stupid me put it on Facebook and now everyone wants me to fix their screen. I said, you making some money, champ? He goes, yeah, about $2,000. I'm like, month or what? He goes, nah, every week. Is that profit or is that revenue? He goes, what's the difference? Fast forward, you know, I catch up with him again, and I say to him, hey champ, what are you up to? He goes, I'm off to South Korea. I'm like, why are you going to South Korea, man? And he's like, there's a conference there. It's the world's e-sport conference, you know. AJ, that's a $30 billion industry. If I could just get 1% of that, oh my God, you know, this is awesome. I'm like, yeah, wow. Just a few years ago, he's failing school, a D student failing school, right? Now he's going to South Korea. Time went on, and then I caught up. No, he gave me a call. He gives me a call, and I don't do phone calls. So when he rings, I know it's got to be an emergency. So I take the call, right? And he sounds really sad. And he says, hey, AJ, listen, I'm in a bit of trouble. I'm in a bit of trouble. Life's pretty tough. And I'm gonna have to give up this business and get a job. And I wanted to call you and let you know because I didn't want you to be let down. I was like, yeah, man, that's deep. And I said to him, hey, you know what? Entrepreneurs do whatever it takes. So if you need to go get a job, I got your back. You'll always have my blessing. Go do what you need to do, champ. I got you. Put the phone down. And that was that. A couple of years later, he's about 22 years old now, 21, 22, and I catch up with him. We catch up here in Darwin. And I said to him, how's employee life? And he goes, well, funny story. You know that thing that you said about entrepreneurs do whatever it takes? Well, I took a look at my business and I realized I didn't have to shut it down. I could sell it. And I said to him, okay, so did you sell it? He goes, yeah, I sold it. Yeah. And I said, well, what are you doing now? He goes, well, funny story. The people that I sold it to, AJ, they don't know how to run an IT consulting firm. So they hired me back as the CEO. Wow. 22 years old, CEO, exited his first business. A few years earlier, he's a kid failing school. That's remarkable. That, my friends, is Robert's story, and I share that with you because at some point in our lives, we've all been like Robert. Or we know people just like Robert. In fact, if I were to visit any of your organizations, there'll be Roberts in there who want to do stuff differently. And it's all of you today, as the guardians of talent, that can make that happen. That's powerful. It has been such an honor and a privilege to serve you all today. And I hope that something I've shared with you really resonated, so you will go out and make tomorrow better than today. Thank you so much.